in order to start our coffee mug, I'm going to go ahead and click New Part, because that's exactly what I want to do. As my part opens, I want to double check a few things. As it opens, I can see that down here, my current setting is millimeters. So mmgs, millimeters, grams, seconds, is my current unit setting. Before I do anything, I want to make sure that I am switching this to IPS. Yours might already say IPS, but make sure you are on IPS, meaning that this entire tutorial is done in inches. One of the other things you're going to want to do is you're going to click the little white gear up top here. You're going to want to go over to Document Properties and Units, and under length, you're going to want to make sure it's giving you out to 3 decimal places. So where it says 0.123. So change that here in the decimal length. Okay, so that we can see that there. We're going to go ahead and push OK. That way, if you're using the tutorial on paper, your numbers all match. To start with, I'm going to go to the front plane and start myself a sketch. Once I'm done that, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to drop down my line tool and grab a center line. This is going to be the axis in which my coffee mug is created by rotating around it. I'm going to start it on the origin and draw it straight up over 4 inches, just because that'll make things easier, and make sure it's vertical. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch just to my standard line tool. Somewhere near the top, don't actually line it up, somewhere near the top-ish, I'm going to draw a non-vertical line, meaning it's close to vertical, but not actually vertical. So I don't want to get that relationship of a vertical line. I want it something like this. Because what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to use my dimension tool to identify where in space this point is and where in space this point is. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go from the origin to the bottom point, and I'm going to pull down so that I get I pull sideways so that I get the vertical height. This I want to be at 2 inches. The next one I'm going to do is I'm going to go from my point to the top point, pulling outside here, and I want this to be 4 inches so that I have that line there. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to identify these horizontally. Now I could do exactly the same thing, but since I'm having to draw half of the coffee cup profile, if you're measuring something, sometimes that's not easy to do, especially with circles. It's much easier to sometimes measure the diameter using a caliper or something of the sort. So here's a cool little trick in SolidWorks. If I click a point and then I click a center line, it'll give me the distance between the two. Or if I move across the center line, it would give me the overall distance if I had known the diameter, since this is going to create something round. This is what the directions show me to do, and I'm supposed to set this one at 3 inches. And then the top point to the center line, I'm supposed to set at 3.375. And I'll set those there. That's my first line, and you can see that I am now fully defined. It's a nice thing to do to kind of check on your way that you are defined as it goes. The next thing the directions tell me to do is to make the bottom line of my cup. So from my center line, or from my origin, out, I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to give this its width dimension the same way I did the widths before. Oops, the wrong thing. In that, I'm going to go with my Smart Dimension tool by clicking the outside point and the center line. I can set this, and the dimension that it gives me is 2.125 overall. The nice part about that measurement is if you set it incorrectly, this point will be outside of this point, meaning your curve would have to go the wrong way. So most people catch that error, but if that's you, that's what you want to do. Let's go ahead now and add our arc, because this is an arc, not a straight line. So I'm going to get the tangent arc tool. So you might have to drop down your arc tool and get tangent arc. It's really important that you start at this top point because this is the line that the arc is actually tangent to. All you should have to do is click that line and come down and click this point right here. And again, it should be fully defined because of all of our other relationships. This is the profile of the outside edge of the mug to start with. Now, because our mug is not solid, we're not going to cap the top. Instead, we're going to use one of our offset tools called offset entities to create the inside edge, basically. When I click offset entities, I want to make sure that add dimensions and select chain is checked. If the yellow line shows up to the outside of my profile, go ahead and click reverse also. This is very helpful. Next, I want to set my thickness. So the thickness of my mug is supposed to be 0.25. That's how thick the actual wall of the mug is. So 0.25 is what I will set it at and what I will accept. Now, one of my options there was to cap the ends, which I do want to do. However, I want to do it with lines. So I'm going to get my line tool again, and at this point, I am going to cap this end, just like that. Which, if I had checked the box that say capped ends, it would have done that for me. However, up here it would have caused a problem. As you can see, there's an angle here. So it would have capped these along an angle, and that's not what I want. So what I want to do in this case is I want to draw a horizontal line longer than I need. I'm then going to go to trim, make sure I'm set to trim to closest, and click the little tails that hang off the edge. As long as you have shaded contours selected, once you trim those parts away, you should get a shaded profile there. This shows me that I'm ready for the next step, which is called a revolve. I'm going to create material by having this profile spin around this axis. As you can see, I've drawn what the coffee mug would look like if I cut it in half one way and then cut it in half again 90 degrees from there, and all I did was draw the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and exit my sketch, and with the sketch highlighted, hit Revolve Boss Base. It's the one that looks like part of a donut. Should automatically put you into an isometric view, and it's going to ask you for the axis of revolution. So I need to tell it that I want it to revolve around this center line. Seems redundant, but the software wants to make sure it's using the right axis. And this will create the initial part of the base of my mug. So I'll go ahead and accept it. Right now I have the basis of the mug. The next thing that I am going to do, that my directions tell me to do, is to use the fillet tool to put a 0.1 inch radius at the bottom edge of the mug. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the fillet tool, which lucky for me is already set at 0.1, and I've got a standard fillet type. I want to put it on this bottom edge. And if you don't see that, make sure that your settings are set to full preview so you can see this little yellow version of what's going to happen. And that's exactly what I want to have happen. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that. When I look next at my directions, sorry, flipping a page that just seems to want to stick. The next set of steps that I'm going to do is to create the rounded top on my mug. So as you might be aware, on a ceramics and stuff, we don't really have square corners. And we wouldn't see these two square edges like this. They'd be highly likely to chip. We'd see the top of this rounded, plus it's for drinking, so that rounded edge would really help with that. So I'm going to get my fillet tool. And the nice part is I am not going to type in a fillet dimension. Instead, I'm going to use the fillet type that is what's called a full round. What this means is I'm going to select 3 sides, and the middle side is the side that actually goes away. Okay? So for the blue side, I'm going to pick the outside of the mug. For the purple, the part that goes away, I'm going to actually pick this top edge. For the pink side that kind of surrounds it, I'm going to pick this inside area. And what it should do, and it might be hard to tell, but basically it's showing me that it's going to round this and the purple edge is going to go away. I'm going to accept that, and now I've got a fully rounded mug on the top. Also very handy. So now I'm going to look at the bottom of my mug. So I'm just going to rotate myself to look at the bottom of the mug. I'm going to click on this surface and start a sketch. With that selected, I'm going to click Offset Entities. It's going to want to create something, and it remembered my 0.25 from before. So I want to actually change that to be 0.1. And I want to reverse it, meaning I want it to go to the inside. Once I've done that, I will accept it, and I should have a fully defined drawing. I am then going to go ahead and go exit my sketch, go to Extrude Cut, and it's going to be asking to cut upward, currently at 0.1. I am not going to want to do 0.1. I want it to do half of that, so 0.05 is what I want. And that'll cut it up just a little bit. Now I have a 90-degree edge right here that I'm going to want to fillet. So I'm going to go ahead and click Fillet. And instead of being 0.1, directions tell me to use 0.05. And I'm going to create a filleted edge right there. Once I've done that and accept it, this is my mug. This is the mug base. Now I am going to do one last thing that in my set of printed and posted instructions comes at the very, very end of this process. And that is to put the fillet down in the bottom of the mug. That is this edge right here. The directions tell me to use a fillet with a radius of 0.125. I'll do that and then accept it. Because again, we wouldn't see a 90-degree corner where those meet. They would meet with a smoother surface to make that stronger. This is the base of the mug and what it should look like. At this point, I am now ready to start creating the handle.